Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet round 2 NRL betting trend preview. In this video, I'm going to go through each game coming up this weekend, go through what the betting trends are, because this is one of the things that I look at when analyzing games. We'll go through who's been winning the recent matchups between these two sides, and most importantly, what were the odds in those previous matchups, so we can see how the bookmakers have adjusted. We'll also look at total trends, also that you can make smarter betting decisions this weekend. In round number 1, we went 7-2 on our 9 NRL bets. They're all posted in the NRL Best Bets membership, which you can access below. That's where you'll get everything I'm betting, plus the Bet Finder tools, and additional preview videos where I'm breaking down my exact bets. First, we're going to look at the Knights versus Dolphins game. Currently, the Knights are $1.56. They're 4.5-point favorites, and the total is 45.5, but has moved up to 46.5 during the week, which, to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised about. I do think that total is a couple of points higher than it really should be for these two sides. Knights, as we know, they built their finals appearance last year on defense, not their attack. They're one of the worst attacking sides down the bottom with the West Tigers. Dolphins are a better attacking side, but we're a bit disjointed against the Rabbitohs, who played a very controlled game last week, so we didn't get a full guide on the Dolphins' attack. However, they did make errors at key stages that were a little bit costly. But for the Dolphins defensively, they're about a mid-range side. So basically for this game, looking at last year's data and what we've seen so far in round 1, we've got two fairly solid defensive sides, and also two sides that aren't stand out in attack. So, to push this over the total, I feel like everything's going to have to go to plan for both of these sides to score that many points. So I'd definitely be leaning towards the under. Their last two games head-to-head have both gone under. Their most recent matchup was in the final round last season, where there was a 49.5-point total and there was only 20 points scored. And in the earlier game that season, they played at Suncorp, and it was a 44.5-point total, and there was a total of 32 points scored in that game. So both went well and truly under the number. Their matchups in 2023 were both high scoring though, so you just want to keep that in mind. There's not a great deal of history between these two sides. Newcastle have won the past 3, but they've all been fairly small margins: 2 points, 4 points, and then 8 points at home last season. Newcastle have also covered the past 2. Last time they met, Knights were a 2.5-point favorite at home, so a 4.5-point number this time around. On to Friday night, and I'm going to do a separate video going through the good try scorer matchups this week, so you definitely want to keep an eye out for that video. That'll be out Thursday afternoon on this channel. Then the early game on Friday, Warriors back at home against the Seagulls. Currently, the Seagulls are $1.40. And then that puts them at a 7.5 handicap for this game and a 46.5-point total. Those were all the early numbers. So far, there's been a bit of money for the Seagulls, and also the totals moved up to 48.5 points. That kind of aligns a little bit with the total history between these two sides. 11 of the past 13 head-to-head have gone over the number. They had a very, very high number last time they met, round 24 last season, with a 54.5-point total, one of the biggest ones last year. There ended up only being the 34 points. Manly won that game 24 points to 10. Seagulls have covered 5 of the past 6 versus New Zealand, but kind of in New Zealand's favor. The home team has won 4 of the past 5 head-to-head. You can see the only one that wasn't the win was the draw, 22 all in round 6 last season, so the early game. Last time the Warriors were at home against Manly, they were 7.5-point favorites. The lines pretty much reversed this time around, so a pretty significant turnaround from their last meeting. For the Seagulls, they were super impressive in their opening game against the Cowboys and were just running tries in easily. Warriors were the polar opposite of that against Canberra over in Las Vegas. Really struggled in attack. Kind of similar to the Dolphins, were very disjointed and didn't look to have that much attacking flair or even many opportunities. And so that's definitely concerning for them this week against Manly. I would be surprised if the Seagulls dropped this game. It's one that they really should win, and should win comfortably, which, especially if you put a bit more weight into round 1 of this season, which I'm a little bit hesitant to do. I don't want to, I never really want to put too much weight behind one game, which is something you got to be cautious of in these first few rounds. But off what we've seen of these two sides so far, they're at polar opposites, and I think the Seagulls get the job done. They'll run in 24 to 30 points in this game, I would assume. And I think the Warriors will once again struggle to score, but they should be a little bit better than their opening game. But this is definitely tougher opposition as well. Seagulls are a much better side than the Raiders. Then we have the Panthers versus Roosters. And last season, these were very, very good matchups. And interestingly, if you go back to round 4 last year, the Roosters were 4.5-point favorites against Penrith. But Penrith got the job done, and they've now won the last 10 against Sydney Roosters. They're huge favorites for this game. $1.08 on the money line, which makes them 20.5-point favorites. Now the line's moved up to 21.5, and they're $1.06. So there's no real value at all in the Panthers to win this game at those kind of odds. Total at 49.5 and is now up to 50.5. This is very, very high for a Panthers game. I've done previous videos, and if you've downloaded the NRL betting guide, you'll know that the Panthers are one of the biggest undersides in previous seasons. And that's on the back of their really strong defense. And they're not a side that tends to run up huge scores against opposition. It's only on kind of rare occasions they do that. And a lot of the time they do that in kind of one half where everything's clicking, the opponent can't get possession, and they just keep on running in tries. But it's very rare you see Penrith run in the 50, 60 points in a game. Penrith are going to be winning this game. They beat the Sharks over in Las Vegas. They have extended rest coming in, and will be very, very keen to start the season 2-0 against the Roosters side that was terrible against the Broncos last week. And, Penrith have that really good record against them. They won their last matchup in the finals last year, 30 points to 10. That was in the qualifying final. Before the Roosters ended up being eliminated in the preliminary final against Melbourne. For this game, as I said, expect Penrith to win and win pretty convincingly. It's probably a game where you can look to try scorers a little bit more. I don't see this game like being within a 10-point margin or anything like that. Roosters' attack was really poor against the Broncos, and the way the Broncos' attack rolled through them, Penrith will likely do something similar. There's a bit of pride on the line, I guess, for the Roosters, which will help them a little bit after being a bit shell-shocked last week. But I don't think it's going to make much difference. The past 3 between these two sides have gone under. You can see their previous matchups, 38, 40.5, and 41.5. So we have a much higher total, almost 10 points higher than their last meeting, which, does tend to lead me a little bit towards the unders for this game. But I couldn't really back it with too much confidence. So probably staying away from the total. In this game, we'll see what I want to do with that as this game gets a little bit closer. Interestingly, the total has been within 5.5 points in 5 of the past 6 head-to-head. So what that means is the bookmakers total, or the total match points line for their previous games, that number has been within 5.5 points of the combined total score. So as you can see here, there's 40 points scored, and it went under the 41.5. This game, 38 points, and then 40.5 in that game. So very, very, the total's been very, very accurate in their previous meetings. So you can trust that a little bit. The bookmakers have been getting these matchups right in previous times. Then we have the Dragons versus Rabbitohs. The Dragons, $1.47, 6.5-point favorites was the opening line for this game, and the total opened at 50.5 points. So far, the money line and handicap stayed bang on the same, and the total has moved up to 51.5 points. So the second of our totals that are now over 50 for this week, which I do find interesting, especially for this matchup. 5 of the past 6 between these two sides have gone under the total points line. Both sides last year were terrible defensively, so the fact that previous matchups did go under, and so far, the Rabbitohs were good defensively against the Dolphins. Dragons had patches where they were good against the Bulldogs last week. So I would slightly be leaning towards the under on this game, especially with that trend backing it, and we're getting a significantly higher total than their last meeting in round 10, which the Dragons won 28-14. Dragons have won 3 of the past 4 versus Rabbitohs, and they've covered the past 4. I don't think there's a great deal between these two sides, but on lineups, on paper, Dragons are the strongest side with the Rabbitohs players out there have injured. So when you factor in the Dragons at home as well, they are deserving to be favourites. And the home team has won the past six between these two sides. So that's definitely a very, very good sign for the Dragons that they could get the job done here at home. But I think this could be like one of those kind of grind games that we saw the Rabbitohs in last week. I think that's going to be their tactics this season. They're not going to win games in shootouts with their current lineup until, especially Latrell Mitchell comes back into this side. As it currently stands, they're not going to, roll in 30, 36 points and win games in that manner. So they're going to have to rely on their defense, and that's what's going to be like the key to them being successful this year. Then we have the Cowboys versus the Sharks. So up in Townsville, the Sharks come back from Las Vegas, then have to travel to Townsville for this game. So it's hardly ideal for them. This is the Cowboys' first home game of the year. But the Sharks are in as $1.35 favorites, minus 9.5 points on the handicap, which has come down to minus 8.5. And then the total for this game opened at 48.5 and has moved up to 50.5. 4 of the past 6 between these two sides have gone over the total. Their last meeting, the total was 46.5, so we've got a 4-point higher number this time around. That game totaled 44 points, only just went under the number. The other game that went under in recent times was back in round 25 in 2023, where those 44 points, so just went under the 47.5 point number. So of the last 6, even the 2 games that went under only went under by a few points. So the way these two teams play, the way the Cowboys leaked points last week against Manly, I think the Sharks will have no trouble running in a score here. Sharks are a very, very good defensive side. So there's kind of 2 ways you could kind of play this. You could play, I think the Sharks will win this game. It's very important that they get back home and win this game. It's very important that they get back to Australia and get a win on the board. I think this is one they just can't afford to drop. So I think they get the job done, and I'd either be looking at like a full game over or potentially just the Sharks team total to go over. They have a very good record against the Cowboys. They've won 12 of the past 14 and have covered the spread in 9 of the past 11. Last time they met, Sharks were a 3.5 point favorite. That was in the finals last year where the Sharks eliminated the Cowboys. So there is that little bit of a revenge factor for North Queensland. I think they have too much improvement to make in order to match it with Cronulla. Last time the Cowboys were at home, they're a minus 1.5 point favorite and did beat the Sharks 30-22. But that was a game where the Sharks kind of everything went wrong for them. It definitely wasn't, their standard performance. So you can kind of ignore that game a little bit. And this game last year, this one was in the finals where the Sharks eliminated the Cowboys. That game was all but over at halftime. The Cowboys made the score a bit more respectable in the second half. But definitely like the Sharks to win and lean towards it being a high-scoring game with most of those points coming from Cronulla. For the Raiders, Broncos. The Broncos are $1.28 favorites off their big win against the Roosters in the opening round. Minus 12.5. Those odds have stayed fairly similar. There's been a bit of money for the Broncos on the money line, but the handicap has stayed the same. And then we've got another 50.5 point total. So it's moved up 1 point since the opener at 49.5. Between these two sides, 8 of the past 9 have gone over the number. The only game in the past 9 matchups that didn't go over was in round 6, 2023 at Suncorp, where there was 34 points scored, and Canberra won outright as $6 underdogs, and 17.5 points was the handicap for that game. Every other game of the past 9 between them has gone over the number. Broncos ran in points last week very, very easily. Raiders were good in attack against the Warriors in America. They bring that similar form. I think, they can score 16, 18 points in this game. Maybe just clear the 20 if they're really well and truly on song. They are at home here as well. With that Bronco, this is definitely like a better attacking side the Raiders are now going to have to face than the Warriors, who really struggled against them. And I think the Broncos should have no issue scoring here. The one concern which I'm going to touch on in the try score videos, the Broncos have a tendency to score quite a lot of tries on the edges. The Raiders do defend that fairly well. So I'm going to, talk about that in the try score preview. So stay tuned for that. Broncos have won and covered 3 of the past 4. As I said, the only one they lost was in round 6. The past 2, though, they won by 11 and won by 24. Broncos should win. Don't think like at $1.22, which is the current odds as I'm looking at it, there's much value at all in that price. So be looking at potentially other ways to play this game, but I would lean towards it being high scoring. We have a lot of trends towards the overs, and the market has shifted that way since the opening numbers. Then on to Sunday, we have the Eels versus Tigers. The West Tigers are favorites, $1.62. They're only a favorite once last season, which coincidentally was also against the Eels. This moved back up to $1.66 currently, but they're still 3.5-point favorites. And the total is 48.5 up to 50.5. Again, you guessed it. 11 of the past 13 between these two sides have gone over. Last time they met was in, what did they call this? The Spoon Bowl at the end of last season, where the Eels ran out 60-26 winners, which sailed over the 54.5. Parramatta covered that themselves. For these two sides, I feel like this is a little bit of a tricky matchup. Parramatta were terrible against Melbourne last week, but this is definitely a lot easier. The problem with this game is you don't have that much to run off both sides. Parramatta were the better attacking side last year, and then they were both the worst two defensive sides. But Parramatta didn't really get to show much in attack against the Storm because the game was over at halftime when it was 46-6. And then the Tigers played Newcastle last week, who are a good defensive side, and we didn't get to see too much of, what the Tigers can do in attack. They had moments where they looked good, but there wasn't a great deal of improvement. They get a couple of key ins by the looks of it this week, which will be confirmed when teams come out. Which I think is definitely going to help them. I think Tigers do get over the line here, but once again, I couldn't back them with much confidence to get the win. Parramatta have won 3 of the past 4, but the Tigers have covered 4 of the past 5. The concern, though, is this time around they're 3.5-point favorites, whereas the Eels have been favorite in the past 10. And when you look through, the Tigers were 2.5-point underdogs in the last game, but prior to that, when they were covering the spread, plus 7.5, plus 12.5, plus 14.5, and plus 21.5. The lines gradually moved all the way back, all the way till now the Tigers are into favoritism. I think for Tigers fans, and the team, I guess, in general, this is a game they would have had circled as a game that they need to win and should win. So I think they get over the line. Closer to this game on Sunday, I'll make a decision on how I want to play it. I'm interested to see how the Knights go on Thursday night, which will give us a better read on the Tigers for this game on Sunday. Remember, you don't need to rush into making your bets. Use the games that will be played prior to help you make decisions. The thing with that, though, is once that game is played, you kind of want to make a decision sooner rather than later. Don't wait after the Knights play and then wait until Sunday to make a decision, because the market will adjust based on Newcastle's performance. You want to be switched on and ready to go as soon as that Knights game gets underway on Thursday. So for members, like those plays, I'll be releasing after Thursday night's game. And then final game of the round number 2, the Bulldogs take on the Titans. This is the Titans' first game of the season. They have had a bit of an interrupted preparation for this game, and Bulldogs probably will get the job done. They weren't dominant against the Dragons and just did enough to win. They're $1.38 to beat the Gold Coast, and with the current handicap at -8.5, let's quickly see what the market's adjusted to. There's been a bit of movement back in favor of the Titans. Gold Coast is 310 into 290, and Bulldogs out to $1.41. Handicap stayed at 8.5. And the total has moved up, but it's only moved up to 46.5 from the opener at 44.5. These sides have a history of going under, but it's not a super strong trend. 5 of the past 8 have gone under. Last time it was a 43.5 number. Titans were scoreless. That was their only game last year in round number 3, where the Bulldogs won 32-0. Bulldogs were 2.5-point favorites, $1.75 for that game. Bulldogs have now won 3 of the past 4 and covered the past 4 versus Gold Coast. Interesting, it wasn't that long ago, round 27, 2023. So, just a tick over a year ago, Gold Coast were $1.24 and 13.5 point favorites against the Bulldogs. Now, we're seeing an 8.5 point handicap the other way. This game, was at Seabus, so Gold Coast were at home. Shows the amount of improvement the Bulldogs have made in that time. For this game, interested to see how the Titans go to kick off the season. But defensively, the Bulldogs should get the job done. Bulldogs still missing lots of tackles. We spoke about in the NRL betting guide how the Bulldogs, even though they're a top 3 overall defensive side, they missed the most tackles last year. Against the Dragons in round 1, they missed 35 tackles. So that area is still there. It'll be a question of can the Titans turn those missed tackles into actual line breaks and then tries. If you have the NRL betting guide, you'll be able to look at that table in one of those early chapters, which will tell you how the Gold Coast Titans go at converting missed tackles into line breaks. It's one of the sections that I've covered in that. So final games around Bulldogs likely get over the line. Hopefully this video gave you some insight into the betting trends for this weekend's games. Remember, this is just one of the factors that I look at when studying and researching games. You then want to take this information and line it up against the statistics for both sides, their attack and defensive numbers, factor in the lineups once teams are announced, then also the situational factors like how teams perform in night games, day games, on home and on the road, all those different things. All that information is in the NRL Bet Finder software, which you also get included with the NRL Best Bets membership, which is where you also get everything I'm betting as well. This is a quick inside look at the NRL Bet Finder, so you see all the different tools for your research, whether you're researching games, try scorers, and all the betting history for each side, which you can then, match up for your betting decisions this week. This is all like the information that the betting companies don't want you to have access to. If you go on to the betting sites, they'll only give you that tiny bit of information that will make you feel like you have enough to make a good decision. But all this information is what you really want to be using to make sure that you're covering every basis. And when you're putting your bets on, you're putting them on in the right place. Plus, obviously, you get access to all the bets I'm having, plus the preview shows as well. So definitely check that out. I'll put the link in the description if you're interested. Thanks, guys, for watching. Stay tuned for the Try Scorer preview.